Hey, it's Brian Burns, the host of the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling podcast. And today, what I wanted to do was give you the presentation that I've given to Citrix and a webinar that I had done on social selling using icebreakers. And icebreakers is maybe old school to some people, but we've forgotten how powerful they can be when we utilize them in selling. And if you match it up with social selling, it's incredibly powerful. But before we get started, let me share this quote from Charles Dickens that really exemplifies what I think is going on today in sales and selling. In that Darwin talked about that it wasn't the strongest of the species that survived, nor was it the most intelligent. It was the ones that could adapt. And that's what we're missing today. We're not adapting to the changes, the dramatic, powerful changes that we either recognize or don't recognize. And let's talk about them. Because the problem that we're facing today is that what used to work no longer does. The things that we're being told to do don't really work. They're not as effective as they used to be. And this is because the world has changed. And I'll get into exactly how it's changed. Some fast and obvious, others slow and non-obvious, and that we are not adapting to them well. And we stick with the old school hard work. Then we try and do it a little bit smarter, but we're still doing things that don't work a little better. And we're not getting the results we want. And I think that what we are is we're in this perfect storm in B2B selling. And it's caused by three major things. One, the economy, which is obvious. We all see the recession that we went through, or depression that we went through in 2008 with the financial meltdown and the ripple effects of that. But we're also in this world of technology where now everything is visible on the internet. There's tons of content, more content than anyone could ever comprehend. Our customers can basically find out more about us and our product and the problem that we solve than we can, because a lot of times they have more experience with it. It's all out there. And we've moved from having a computer on the desktop to a laptop, to a tablet, to a smartphone in our pocket. So we're online all the time, and we need to learn how to leverage that instead of fighting it. And technology has gotten in the way of sales with things like voicemail and spam filters and directory routers for our phone calls. So there's been a lot of stonewalling of salespeople. And the third, and probably the most important thing, is culture. And this is something that nobody really talks about, that we really have now three generations in the workforce: baby boomers, Gen Xers, millennials coming up, and they all have different styles, different etiquettes, different ways they like to communicate, to investigate, to find new products, and how they want to deal with people. All of that has now changed. And as salespeople, we're overwhelmed with all this. We don't know what to do. So we kind of stick with what we're told to do, what the experts tell us, or what our manager tells us. And when it doesn't work, who do we blame? We blame ourselves, we blame them, and it doesn't matter because it's not working. And the biggest problem is that we're unable to engage with latent prospects. This is the outbound world. In sales, if we divide it into the inbound, where people come to us, and the outbound, where the people that we go after, it's the outbound where the real opportunity is. The inbound is very hard. We know how to deal with that. We're pretty good with that. We know how to engage them, keep the momentum going, outflank our competition, close that. I'm not going to add much value to that on this call today. What I want to talk about is the outbound, the latent prospects, the people who don't know that they have a problem and they don't know there's a solution because they don't know there's a problem. How do we find them? How do we engage with them in an authentic, humanistic way where there is no fear, there is no rejection? That's what I want to talk about. And let's face it, leads are just lacking. There's not enough inbound to keep us busy. Not enough inbound to make our number. That's what we really care about. And what we really want to do is blow our number away. And that's what's most important to us. So access to people has narrowed or disappeared. We have spam filters. We don't open emails that we don't know who they're from. We don't return phone calls. We don't pick up the phone unless we know who's calling. People are no longer as accessible as they used to be. And that's scary. So what do? Where does that leave us? This is the modern sales paradox. where we have everyone is visible, everyone is online in some way. We can get access to all this company information, all this personal information about people through Google searches, through LinkedIn, through Twitter, through all these social intelligence resources. But they don't want to hear a pitch. They're inaccessible. So this is the paradox that we live in. Everyone's visible, so there's unlimited leads, but nobody wants to talk to us. So how do we solve that? And that's what I want to get into. And I think we're being oversold in a lot of different areas. We're told that inbound content, both for marketing and sales, is the way to go. And I think it helps. I think it helps a lot. But it's not producing the amount of business that I want or that you want. We're told to warm up the calls, but if no one picks up and no one returns the call, it doesn't matter how warm it is. It's not going to get us through. And we end up doing a ton of research on a call that doesn't really connect with anybody. No one picks up. No one really wants to talk to a salesperson anymore. And just ask yourself, do you do it? And at 3%, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a smarter way. There's got to be a way that we can adapt to this. And that's what I want to do, is help you adapt to this. And referrals are great, but referrals are limited. We don't have many of them. If you're new and got a new territory, you got to get referrals from customers. If you don't have many customers, or the customers that you have aren't really happy, you're not going to get very many referrals. And if you spend all your time getting referrals, they're not going to be enough. And then social networking, I think, has been oversold, not because it's bad, not because it's wrong, but because people don't know how to leverage it. People don't really know that it's different. You can't treat it like spam. You cannot treat it like a cold call. It is not a place for just pitching. It is a place for being social, for connecting with human beings on a one-to-one level. And this is the world that we live in today. We're stuck in this red ocean of selling where there's an active sales cycle. There's not enough of them, not enough to make our numbers. It's highly competitive. The customer's commoditizing us, and we're viewed as just another goldfish in the bowl. People aren't open unless we bring something to them. And this world, I think we got a handle on, but it's not enough. We need to move. We need to jump out of there and get into the blue ocean of selling. And this is where it's 1,000 times bigger than the red ocean. There's less competition. We can leverage technology and adapt to it. This is where the opportunity exists. The people who can grasp this and can comprehend it, and believe me, it's brain dead simple. All you have to do is follow what I'm talking today, and you can find more people than you'll have time to deal with. Because what we have to do is adapt to these new avenues, LinkedIn, Twitter, dealing with cell phones and texting, and getting a sense of how people want to communicate, how they want to connect and engage with others. And it's different. It's different for everybody. It's different for every market. This is why science really doesn't apply to this. Everybody's, Brian, give me some research. Give me some reports on this. Well, it's going to be different whether you're based in New York or Alabama or in England or Australia or wherever you are. You've got to adapt to your marketplace. Where are they? Where do they communicate? How do they communicate? How do they engage? But at the base level, they're all human beings. They want help and they want to be helped. So we can deal with that and kind of develop from there. So this new approach that I'm talking about, I just use the word FACE as an acronym. It's for find and connect and then engage. And it's just that simple. And maybe it's too simple for us to comprehend because we're so brought up in this world of, I got to pitch. I've got to force my way in there. I got to bang down doors. I got to be the gorilla. I got to be an animal. No, you got to be a human being because the outbound world is different than the inbound world. The outbound world wants to deal with human beings, not salespeople. The last person they want to deal with is a salesperson. Doesn't mean they're not accessible. Doesn't mean they don't want to help. It just means how you interact with them is critical. So finding is the easiest part. And I've got tons of videos on YouTube and podcasts on the brutal truth of sales and selling to find out easy, fast ways of finding people. Finding people is not the problem. You'll be able to find more than you can ever possibly contact or deal with. There's millions of people. I've got access to 2 million people on my LinkedIn. So we cannot focus today on finding, but what I want to do is focus on connecting, where we can connect with pretty much infinite number of people. And connecting is not this passive thing like a phone number or an email address. Connecting on LinkedIn and Twitter is this bi-directional connection with people where you're connecting with their profile and you're able to share information and visibility into each other's world, and do this in a way that's social, that's communicative, that's helpful, but not stalking. You're not going to be the creep that's focusing and stalking them. And you've got to learn how to chill, how to relax, how to take your time, because if you rush things, you're going to basically say, hey, I'm a sleazy sales guy, and I'm going to push something down your throat. So how do you connect? Here's a real easy template. If you just follow this simple template, focus on two things: connection that you already have, who you already connected to with them, and commonality. What do you have in common with them? What groups and topics do you have in common with them? And there's always something. And then always give them an out so that if they don't want to connect, they just ignore the invite. And you want to do this because LinkedIn does not allow you to be rejected infinite number of times. After a certain amount of times, they put you on hold or they freeze you for a while. So what you want to do is be humble, be complimentary, give why you want to connect, and understand completely if they don't want to, and just ask them to ignore it. And then once you connect, do not pitch. Do not do anything else for at least a week. Chill. Because people are already a little bit suspicious about you. They're a little bit cautious about you. They don't know really who you are or what you want. But they are now aware of you. And being aware of you is critical because it's the first step. You just want to chill. Just take a break. Go on to your next one. Put a little reminder in your CRM to get back with them in a week. And once that week is over with, start sharing non-company, non-product branded content that's based on the problem that you solve. And there's tons of it out there. If you don't know how to find it, go to buzzsumo.com and just type in the topic of the problem that you solve. You'll find more content than you can ever possibly share. And think of yourself at this stage, just this stage, not as the animal salesperson, but as a park ranger, where you're there to give out information and guide people and be the point of contact about this topic to them. Be that expert, that resource for them at this point. Later, you'll get to be the animal salesperson. But at this point, you want to be the friendly person, the person to help them, guide them, support them. So engage, do not pitch. This is the key difference with people. How's this different than what I do already? Well, what you do already is you start getting into your value proposition. You start talking about the problem that you solve. You start giving examples. You start telling stories and case studies and sharing branded content and presentations and asking for a meeting and asking for a visit. No, that's the wrong thing to do at this time. That works with inbound. It does not work with outbound. At this point, you do not want to be pitching because people don't want to be pitched or sold at this point because they're programmed to say no. Do you want to hear no? Then don't ask for them to tell you no. And take your time. Do not be the person who pounce. We all get this. We all get that LinkedIn invite with the phony picture and no real profile. And we're like, oh, God, is this a spammer? Is this a salesperson? And you know it is, but you accept it because you don't want to reject it and you want to be friendly. And, of course, 5 minutes later, you get the spam email. And then they figure out your phone number and they call you 5 minutes later. And you're like, no, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. I don't know if I can help you, but you sure are pouncing on me, and I'm not getting the sense that I'm getting anything out of this. This is how we react to this. And that's what you do not want to do. It's too much too soon. We need to break the ice. The ice is cold right now. It's blocking us. We need to break it. And we're forgetting about this humanistic point where we've got to act like human to human selling, not machine to machine or prospect to sales rep. We've got to build rapport. And I'm not talking about just the the how's your day going rapport, or did you watch the game last night, or boy, it's been raining for 5 days. Not that type of rapport, but the rapport based around the common interests, the problem that you solve, the problem that they have, and how you solve it differently, and how they feel it, and how it affects them. That's what I'm talking about. That's the icebreaker. It's not about your elevator pitch. It's not about your value proposition. Those are good, but it's too early. It's not the right time. It's not the right person. We've got to build. This is where the icebreaker, this is the critical piece that's missing in these outbound selling. It's not a pitch. It's not how are you. It's not asking for 5 minutes. It's a conversation starter, but it is based off of the problem that they have. Not your company, not your product, focused on common interests, so that it's not this fluffy social call, but it is a business call that gets you to qualify, because too often we spend so much time with somebody who's not qualified. They're either completely not interested, don't have the problem, they're the wrong person, the wrong company, the wrong time, who knows? You got to qualify them, not try and convince them at this stage. So let's look at an example of an icebreaker. Just say, hey, I'm doing some industry research on a common topic between you and them. Not sure if you're the right person, but would like to get your feedback on this issue or that issue. Or I'm working on a blog post, a podcast, a video, a white paper, a presentation, whatever you want. It's not about lying or misleading. It's about breaking the ice. It's about starting a conversation about what you do and what they do, and how they do it and how you do it, and what's going on, and to build interest, awareness and interest, and then preference. This is the game, the dance that we're moving. And if you give the pitch at this point, which you're programmed, and you just can't sometimes not do it, you're going to repel them. You're going to push them away. And that's not what you want to do. You want to leverage the icebreaker. You want to get this to be the resource that you have. And if you're able to do this, the world is your oyster, because now everyone's visible. You can connect with pretty much, I'm getting 80% plus acceptance on these connections. And very quickly, instead of doing 50 calls a day to get 2 people on the phone, you can do 25, 30 of these and get 15 people on the phone. These are cold people that didn't even know you existed. And this is incredibly powerful, and anyone can do it. You don't have to be a genius or an industry expert, and there's no fear. There's no rejection. Because if nobody accepts your connection, do you really care, as opposed to being hung up on, as opposed to getting the brush off? Hey, I'll call you later. Who wants that? So here, what you want to do is use qualifying questions, but without being salesy. I use reverse psychology. It works to open up people. It lets them off the hook. Say something like, I'm sure you don't know, but I thought I would ask. Does your group have this issue? An open-ended question. They say, no, we don't have that issue. Have you ever heard of it? Who else feels this way? I'm doing some more research, and I need some input, and I'd really like some insights from you. You'll get some help, because you're not pitching, because you're not acting like a salesperson, because you're acting like a human being and not a salesperson. And don't get into your pitch. Leave the door open. If they are qualified, utilize that 5, 10, 15, 20-minute conversation and leave them hungry, because you don't want to get into your pitch on this first call. Why? Because then they see you now as a cheap, sleazy salesperson. What you want to do is leave the door open by saying, would it be okay if I check back with you and if I had additional questions? This way, you get back to them in a week or two. You get to do more research. You get to think about what would get me involved with them. How do I present my product to them? What other questions can I get? Maybe they aren't qualified and they gave me some insights into who is. I'm now connected with them, so I can see who they're connected with at the company, and proceed and start thinking like a detective instead of a pushy salesperson. So let's look how we would do this. We've seen how we would do it on LinkedIn, which is really simple. Twitter is even simpler, and I think becoming even more powerful, because a year ago, if you asked me about Twitter, I would have said, it's a toy. I don't see any business use for it. I see it as a waste of time. It's just a bunch of people, yelling at each other all day, pumping out content that nobody reads. But I've gotten into it over the last 5 or 6 months, and now my business is primarily focused on Twitter. We're still doing a ton with LinkedIn, still doing a ton with email and phone. But social is so much more open, is so much easier, so much more natural and less time consuming that people find it easier, especially with the younger people. So it's super easy to find people on Twitter. You have hashtag pretty much every subject in the world. Hashtag identifies a topic. Find the bloggers who are primary thought leaders in your space about the problem that you solve. Follow them, see who's following them, see what content they're sharing, see what people are saying, do a little bit of listening. You can search for people. Pretty much everyone's on Twitter. Every company's on Twitter. So all your customers are on there. See what they're talking about, what they care about, what's important, who has the most followers and who has the most traffic and likes. And you get a sense of what's going on in your community. But then when you want to connect on Twitter, it's super simple because there's no approval process like you have in LinkedIn. So you can follow anybody who doesn't have their account locked down, which is very few. And this is the process that I go through. I'll follow somebody that I want to connect with, essentially, and then I'll chill, wait a couple days. I'll favorite one tweet of theirs. I'll chill, and then I'll retweet one tweet of theirs. Then I'll chill. Hopefully they'll follow me back, which happens more than half the time. If they do, then you have the ability to direct message them, where you now have a bi-directional communication with them. And if they don't, you can always call them out just by using their username, @username, and just ask them a quick question. And it's super simple because Twitter has this culture of openness and friendliness that the others don't have. So here's the icebreaker I use on Twitter. I have a quick question you may be able to help me with. Can I call you? And that might be the most aggressive, or you might just say something like, I was curious about your thoughts on this issue. And you can always try and bridge, because a lot of people don't want to type out, or the typing is too restrictive because you've got 140 characters. It's not really that much. It sounds like a lot, but it's not. Are you open to helping somebody new with this issue? If you use these 3 Twitter icebreakers, you'll have enormous success. Now let's talk about the mistakes that people make with icebreakers. The first and the most common is they move too fast. They go from finding, connecting, and then they try and break the ice immediately. Chill. Just take time. If you're wondering if you can't take too much time, a week is fine. A couple of days is a little tight. The same day is way too tight, because you're basically telling them that you are a salesperson. And make sure your profile doesn't say account manager or salesperson. Have it be, industry expert, customer advocate, something vanilla that doesn't say, hey, I'm a sales guy. Hey, I want to crush my quota. Nobody wants that. And then the second mistake is not sticking with the icebreaker. If you make it a rule not to get into the pitch on the first ice-breaking conversation. Why? Because once you get into the pitch, you can't go back to the research. You can't go back to the icebreaker. And what you want to do is stay with the icebreaker until they ask you, hey, so what do you do? Tell me about what you do. Tell me about your company. Tell me about what other people. Once you get that interest, then you can move on. Focus on leaving the door open for multiple calls. And a lot of people say, well, this seems like it would take longer. No, it actually is shorter. If you want to get a no fast, give a pitch. You'll get the no as fast as you can. But the objective is not to get the no fast. The objective is to get the yes. And if the yes takes a couple of calls, that's okay. As opposed to a couple of calls just to get the person on the phone, where people are telling me, oh, it takes 6 calls. Are you kidding me? I'm going to spend 6 dials to get somebody on a phone call that isn't even qualified, isn't even interested, isn't even aware of me. That's not a waste of time. Come on. And then people who try and close for a meeting or a demo or a webinar before there's any interest built. Huge mistake here. Now let's talk about when it's done well. You will know if the person's qualified. You will know that their views on your solution. They will ask you about yourself and what do you do. They will try and convince you that they're interested. Now, I want you to give this a shot. Give me your feedback. I'd be happy to help anybody. Check out the podcast, The Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling, on iTunes and Stitcher. And leave your comments. I'd love to hear them. Thanks for listening.